The following is a production of Cary TV, the Town of Cary's government access channel.
Good evening, everyone. We begin by calling to order our Planning and Zoning Board meeting for the 22nd of July. We start, as always, with approving the agenda. If anyone has any changes or recommendations to the agenda, please let them be known. Otherwise, I would be looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
Second.
I think Major got in there first, right into the wire. Any discussion? All those in favor of adopting the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The agenda has been adopted. We have some meeting minutes for May 20th and also for June 24th to review and also approve. Does anyone have any amendments or changes, additions, or otherwise to the minutes of either of those sets of minutes? If not, would I have a motion to approve both sets, please?
I'll make a motion, we approve both.
Second.
Much quicker this time.
Right there.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The minutes have been adopted. We will begin our first of three cases, two rezoning cases and one other issue this evening. First, we start off with 19 REZ07, and we'll see Ms. Grannon first. Hello.
Good evening, Board. I would like to take just a moment to introduce you to one of the newest members of our planning department, Erin Puckett. She joined us on December 13th of last year. She's been working behind the scenes diligently for the past few months, working on zoning cases, and this is her first presentation to the board. So please welcome Erin Puckett. Thank you.
Glad to have you here, Ms. Puckett.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. So good evening. This is a request to rezone 13.23 acres located at 1612 Cavalcade Drive. The property is located west of NC 540, south of its interchange with NC 55. The Ridgefield Farms subdivision is under construction directly to the west. The current zoning is R40 and Watershed Protection Overlay District. The applicant is requesting to rezone to R8CU, and the existing watershed protection overlay would remain. The applicant is offering 4 conditions related to their request, and these include: uses will be limited to detached dwellings and accessory uses, as well as neighborhood recreation. The density will be limited to 2 units per acre. Lot sizes along the western property boundary adjacent to Ridgefield Farms will be a minimum size of 10,000 square feet and will otherwise be per the LDO, which would be an 8,000 square foot minimum. And a minimum of 5,000 square feet of community gathering space will be provided, which is more than double the LDO requirement. According to Town of Cary GIS, a stream buffer runs along the northern property line. No wetlands or floodplains appear to be present on the site, but field determination of such features shall be required at time of development plan review. Staff's preliminary analysis against the Cary Community Plan finds that the proposed rezoning addresses policies in the Live and Shape chapters most directly. Regarding the future growth framework, the subject site is located in the mixed neighborhood category. Single-family detached dwellings are a recommended use in these areas. The The proposed development could contribute to housing choice in the area, as much of the existing and under construction residential development nearby consists of townhouses and multifamily units. An analysis of dwelling units within 1 mile of the site finds that only about 30% of units are detached homes, so this project would increase the proportion of detached dwellings in the surrounding area. The site is also in an emerging neighborhood where much development is taking place. With a variety of housing types proposed or under development review in the area, the proposed single-family detached dwellings would contribute to this mix. By assuring a 10,000 square foot minimum lot size adjacent to Ridgefield Farms, as well as a 2-unit per acre maximum density, the proposed rezoning offers some consistency with the form and appearance of the adjacent subdivision. In addition, a 100-foot highway corridor buffer will be required along NC 540, thus maintaining the aesthetic value of the corridor. The proposed outer loop greenway corridor is located along the eastern boundary of the property and will connect to the Nancy Branch Greenway north of the site. A neighborhood park is also proposed for the southeast corner of McCrimmon Parkway and Green Level Church Road, which is less than a mile from the site. An extension of Cavalcade Drive into the site will be constructed as part of this project, and a connection to Tisnell Drive will also be required. One citizen attended the neighborhood meeting in May. He owns the property directly to the south and had interest in potential road and utility connections to his property. To date, staff have received 1 phone call asking for information about the case in regards to the Cavalcade Drive connection. A public hearing was held at the June 27th Town Council meeting. No citizens spoke during the hearing. 1 council member asked to verify whether the development would connect to Tisnell Drive in addition to Cavalcade, and this has since been confirmed. There have been no changes since that hearing. Staff's analysis finds that the request is consistent with the Imagine Cary Community Plan. Specifically, the proposal supports policies in the Live, Shape, and Move chapters, and is consistent with uses found in the mixed neighborhood designation. The proposed development is also a logical continuation of existing residential development directly to the west in terms of use, density, and lot size, and would make reasonable use of a somewhat constrained property adjacent to NC 540. In reviewing this request, the board may consider a number of factors, such as the use, density, and lot size proposed, whether the development provides appropriate transitions between neighboring uses, and any other issues necessary to determine whether the proposal is consistent with the Imagine Cary Community Plan. This concludes staff's presentation. The applicant's representative is here to present, after which staff will be available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Nicely done, thank you. We'll hear from the applicant next.
Good evening. My name is Bahati Mutisia with Parker Poe Adamson Bernstein. I'm here representing Lennar Carolinas, the applicant and the contract purchaser for the site. Aaron did an excellent job summarizing what we think is a very straightforward, low-impact request that will provide additional housing in a growing area of Cary, will be an ideal use for the site given its location near the I-540 corridor, and also is a great addition to the surrounding uses that already exist in the area. As she mentioned, we're requesting a rezoning from R40 to R8 with conditions. The mixed neighborhood designation in the Cary Community Plan does allow the R8 zoning. So while we are increasing the density, we are providing conditions that will keep the density relatively low and keep the lot sizes relatively large. She mentioned the 4 conditions that we're offering, and I just want to touch on how they are supported by the Cary Community Plan and Cary's plan for development in general. As she mentioned, we're limiting the use to single-family detached dwellings, which are permitted in the mixed neighborhood designation in the plan, which applies here. We're also proposing the 5,000 square feet of community gathering space, which is over 2 times the requirement, which is supported by the plan, which encourages open space and development. We're also limiting the density to 2 units per acre, which is well below the 5.44 maximum density of the R8 zoning district. And then we're also requiring that all the lots that are adjacent to the Ridgefield Farm neighborhood would have a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet. And this is to ensure that we are consistent with the adjacent subdivision. And that will comply with the Cary Community Plan because we're maintaining the neighborhood character and maintaining Cary's attractive appearance and quality of development. Aaron also mentioned that we're required to have that buffer along the I-540 corridor and that there's a stream buffer along the north, which makes development on this site somewhat difficult, but we think this use is ideal for this site given its size and location. So I'll keep my remarks short, but I'll be available for any questions if you have any.
Thank you. So before we begin, does anyone have any questions for the applicant or for the staff today? I'll start on this side.
I don't have any.
Nothing?
I have a question. So the uses is the community space then, essentially. The difference between residential, maybe this is a question for staff, but the difference between residential and residential here is they're just asking for community space. I'm a little confused.
No, they would be looking to develop single-family detached residential, but then they would also be able to have community gathering space. So they'd have several lots here with a density of 2 dwelling units per acre, but then they'd also be providing 5,000 square feet of community gathering space within this new residential development.
And was the previous zoning for multi-use?
Previous zoning was R40, so it would have just allowed 1 lot, per acre, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And could you repeat or restate the buffer requirements along 540?
So along 540, there is a highway corridor buffer requirement, so that's a little different than our typical streetscape requirement. So that is actually a 100-foot buffer requirement, so it's quite a bit wider.
And are there any other requirements associated with what goes into that buffer?
There may be a planting standard. I could check on that and get back to you with
Okay.
that answer from the LDO.
Thank you.
I have no questions. Ryan?
I just have one question on, regarding the transportation part, so the development would be, the connectivity would be through Cavalcade and Tisnow Drive. And I'm just curious, in the future, if Hortons Creek Road is, I guess it's intended to be continued and go under 540, would that site, I'm looking at slide 14, would that site have connectivity to that road extension? I'm just out of curiosity.
My understanding is that it could. I'm not sure that it's being shown on those development plans currently from my research, but I was told from some of our development review staff that that is a possibility for a future connection.
The road alignment's not determined yet
Okay.
on the north, but, right now, we just don't have that information at this time.
Okay,
Because there's no development, plan at the moment up here in this area, so,
in that northern section there, yeah.
okay.
Okay, I was just curious. All right, thanks. I don't have any other questions.
And so there's no other questions for the staff or for the applicant? Then would someone have a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move that the board find case number 19 REZ07 is consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Have we a second?
I second it.
Any further discussion?
I don't have any much discussion. It's almost like all the conditions that the applicants put on this, it just really feels like it's a phase 2 of the development of that was already existing, so it just seems to make sense.
Anything
I
else?
really have nothing to add now.
Any other discussion from anyone else? Then would all those in favor of this motion please say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed say no? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. First of many, hopefully. We're next on to 18 REZ04. Mr. Wilson, here we go.
Good evening. We're excited to be with you again to talk about the Green Level Mixed Use Destination Center rezoning that's been proposed by Duke Health. As we discussed at your work session last month, the site is located west of NC 540 and is bisected by Green Level West Road. The site and the majority of the land west of this interstate interchange are largely undeveloped other than a few subdivisions, although we do have Thomas Brooks Park and USA Baseball just to the north, and we have the new Green Level High School on Roberts Road just to the southwest. In anticipation of development in this area, the town's adopted roadway widths map calls for Green Level West Road to be built out as a 4-lane thoroughfare with a landscape median. The widening of Green Level West to 4 lanes between NC 55 and NC 540, which is identified by the red box in this graphic, was completed in the spring of 2018. The portion of Green Level West Road that's west of NC 540 and not included in the red box is presently a 2-lane ditch cross-section. The site's located east of 2 major creeks, White Oak and Bachelor Branch, both of which show up in the town's adopted Greenways Master Plan. The northern portion of the site is in the town's ETJ and is zoned residential 40. The southern portion is in the county's jurisdiction and is zoned residential 40 watershed. The applicant has also submitted an annexation petition that's running concurrently through the process. Since the site is in a destination center, the applicant's proposing MXD rezoning for the property. One of the requirements associated with MXD zoning is that the applicant also submit a preliminary development plan for the site. We've been working with the applicant since the public hearing last August and the council work session last November, and it's important to note that tonight's presentation reflects all of the changes that have been made in response to all of the comments that the applicant has received. At a big picture level, the plan breaks the site into 13 development pods. Buildings along Green Level West will be a minimum of 3 stories in height. There'll be a minimum of 6 community gathering areas. And the plan also includes a commitment to create a north-south pedestrian corridor through the site that will ultimately link the development to both the White Oak Greenway to the south and the future Bachelor Branch Greenway to the northwest. The plan includes a mix of land uses and has minimums and maximums for each of these uses. Since the site is bisected by Green Level West Road, the program is divided into northern and southern areas. A hospital would be an allowed use on the north side, but not on the south side. Meanwhile, residential uses are proposed on the south side, but not on the north. Overall, the plan includes up to a maximum of 750,000 square feet of office space. A condition has also been offered to only allow drive-through facilities for banks or pharmacies. In terms of site access, the site is reliant on access points A and B for ingress and egress on Green Level West Road. Access point A will be the northern leg of what will eventually be a full movement intersection. Access B will offer a median break with limited turn movements, and access points C and D are right in, right out. Staff believes the proposed access points are reasonable and appropriate for the site. A traffic study was prepared as part of this proposal, and it recommended improvements at 10 intersections. The applicant is proposing to make these improvements, or at least partial improvements, at 8 of these intersections. We note that per the staff's suggestion, the applicant has proposed to either construct one of these improvements at the intersection of Green Level Church Road and Beaver Dam Road, or alternatively make a payment in lieu towards a traffic signal at the intersection of Green Level Church Road and Green Hope School Road. The condition allows the town's Transportation and Facilities Director to decide which improvement the town wants as part of development plan review and approval. The plan makes a significant commitment to utilize structured parking. All 5 pods that front on Green Level West Road are required to have a minimum of 50% structured parking. To encourage the view of the buildings along Green Level West Road, parking has been limited as follows. First, surface parking is only allowed between buildings in the street where retail or medical uses are present, and in such cases, is limited to 1 double-sided bay as shown here on the top right. And 2, the amount of structured parking that fronts on Green Level West Road is limited to a maximum of 25% of the total frontage. To further protect the view along Green Level West Road, the plan also includes architectural and screening requirements for structured parking that exceed those normally required by the town's Community Appearance Manual. The PDP proposes 40,000 square feet of community gathering space and a minimum of 6 areas that would be a minimum size of 2,000 square feet each. There are also spacing requirements that these areas are accessible to all buildings and spread throughout the project. In response to council questions and feedback, the applicant has also added a condition to provide a 10-foot wide, grade-separated tunnel under Green Level West Road to help facilitate connectivity between the northern and southern portions of the project. Town staff and capital area preservation staff visited and evaluated 3 historic structures on the assemblage, and only one house proved to be architecturally intact and worthy of preservation. Based on the widening of Green Level West Road to a 4-lane cross-section, though, staff believes that preserving this house in place isn't practical. Staff has discussed relocating the house with the applicant, and they've made a commitment through a zoning condition to relocate and place the structure under a historic preservation easement, which supports an Imagine Cary community plan goal to preserve the town's historic resources. As we discussed at your work session, the LDO recognizes the need and provides the flexibility for PDPs to propose and incorporate alternative standards to achieve the right formula of land uses, intensity, and site design for success. Duke Health has requested several alternative standards in order to successfully achieve community plan objectives in this destination center. The requested alternative standards for this PDP generally fall into 2 categories. The first category relates to landscaping and aesthetics. Staff believes that these proposed alternative standards are reasonable as they promote the efficient use of land while maintaining the intent of our landscaping and aesthetic objectives. The second category relates to parking and approval processes. These proposed changes seek to provide parking flexibility and to avoid future quasi-judicial review that would normally be associated with certain requests. We again believe that these proposed alternative standards are reasonable, especially given the significant frontage and off-site traffic improvements associated with the PDP. A neighborhood meeting was held on June the 6th of 2018. A dozen citizens attended, and there were 3 main topics of discussion: access and circulation, the anticipated construction schedule, and what's actually involved in getting a hospital on the site. At the council public hearing on August the 23rd of 2018, there were no citizens who spoke. At the public hearing and at a subsequent work session, the council discussed several items. They expressed concern about north-south connectivity, and the applicant subsequently added a pedestrian tunnel to the plan. They questioned some of the alternative standards that were being requested, and the applicant proceeded to remove a requested alternative standard for bike lanes and provided additional details and conditions regarding retaining walls. The council expressed a preference for urban rather than rural architecture. The applicant responded by refining the PDP's conditions to be more urban. And the council discussed cycle tracks and requested more information. The applicant is now requesting the option of being able to potentially use cycle tracks, a decision that would be made at the time of development plan review when they actually have their full architectural and engineering team engaged. Staff has observed that there are relevant policies in multiple chapters of the Imagine Cary Community Plan. We believe that it is the specific recommendations for the Green Level Special Planning Area in the Shape chapter, though, that are most relevant to this proposal. As you can see in the Green Level Special Planning Area, the overall area is broken into sub-areas, with the most intense development being envisioned in the dark brown destination center around NC 540 and the Green Level West interchange. This destination center area is where the site, which is highlighted here in yellow, is located. As one of the last large sites suitable for major employment uses in Cary, the Green Level Destination Center area is intended to provide significant economic development opportunities with ample room for employment growth, as well as offering residents a place to shop and dine within a short commute of homes. Class A office buildings and a highly walkable design are envisioned with active public spaces. And a consistent design palette's encouraged, and historic assets are to be protected wherever possible. At a more detailed level, these themes are to be achieved by having employment, commercial, and higher density residential units that are horizontally and vertically mixed, with buildings that exhibit high quality architecture, are 4 to 7 stories in height, use structured parking, and are all accomplished through a site design that protects and incorporates prominent environmental features. Based on our thorough review of the rezoning and preliminary development plan, staff believes that the proposal achieves multiple objectives and policies associated with the Green Level Destination Center designation and is consistent with the Imagine Cary Community Plan. To help with the board's discussion of this proposal, we share 3 questions for the board's consideration. These questions are taken from the community plan's objective of developing a signature mixed-use destination center in the green level area. The first question is, does this development support the goal of creating a prominent destination center that will support residences in green level and the larger region? The second question is, does this proposal include not only commercial and residential uses, but also a significant portion of the sites dedicated to office or employment uses? And 3, does the proposal highlight the juxtaposition of a major interchange and nearby sensitive natural areas by integrating environmental features into a densely developed and vertically mixed center? This concludes staff's presentation. At this time, we'd like to turn things over to Jason Barron, who will speak for the applicant, and afterwards we'll be available to answer any questions.
Thank you. There he is.
Thank you, Rob. Mr. Chair, members of the board, Jason Barron with Morningstar Law Group here on behalf of the applicant, Duke Health. Also here with me tonight are representatives of the McAdams Company, who's provided the engineering and land planning that have produced the plans that have gone into this request. I know this has gone through a work session we attended, and we're very interested to hear the feedback and the conversation that occurred at you all's work session. And so I'm going to keep my comments brief because I know this is the second time you're hearing this, and Rob, on both occasions, has done a very thorough job, as he always does, of presenting the details of the plan. I just want to tell you, we've been in the process for a long time. I mean, this is about 18 months since we initially submitted the rezoning request for this development to get here, and that's a reflection of the significant hard work that the town staff has put in, that you all have put in, as well as Duke has put into this process to make sure that when it was time to come, when it was time to ask for approval, when it was time to ask for a finding from this board, that the cake was ready, that it had been fully baked, and I think it is. And I want to applaud my client. When this case first came to me, I was joking with a council member earlier today. When this case first came to me, and I heard what they wanted to do, I was very familiar with the recommendations of the Cary Community Plan with respect to the destination center. I was familiar with the green level special planning area and the recommendation that in this destination center it needed to be employment based. And so I chuckled. I couldn't wait to walk this one through town hall. This was going to be as much of a layup as you could possibly find, because in my initial review, I believed, and I believe today, that it satisfies just about every policy you could possibly find related to how land use would occur in this development. I've been impressed with Duke's willingness to be a team player through this process, and not to suggest that they would otherwise do anything differently, but it really has been a collaborative effort with the town, and I think the changes that have been made in response to council questions at the public hearing, as well as their work session, are reflective of Duke's strong desire to partner with the town and make this the best that they can. The last point I want to make, and it gives me great comfort, it's Duke at the table. You know, this is essentially a master developer who wants to develop a master planned community, and so, you know, we can't plan for everything in any zoning case, as you all are very fully aware. You know, we can do what we can, but ultimately there will be things that happen during the development process, some that are predictable and some that aren't. For me personally, I find a lot of comfort knowing how important this is to the town, that it's Duke at the table, because you do have a master developer, and they're going to do everything they can to ensure the long-term viability of the very significant investment they're making in this site. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time walking you through the Cary Community Plan, because I do believe it checks all those boxes, and as I said, Rob has done a fantastic job of walking you through those. But we appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, and we would respectfully request you all's finding that we are consistent with the Cary Community Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I open this up to questions, one general question. We did have a work session on this. Is anything different as a result of having been through that work session? Would you please highlight those things just very quickly?
There have been no changes to the proposal since the work session.
Great.
So what's before you tonight is the same that was before you last month.
Okay. So with that in mind, if you have any questions that you thought of since the work session, they'd all be fair game as well. I'll start on the right this time.
I want to pass. If it's as we had extensive discussion last month, then I don't have any, my questions were answered and have been answered.
I have two questions for staff. The first is just to confirm the traffic study. That was modeled assuming the maximums, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And secondly, it looks like as part of the application, the applicant's asking for parking reductions up to 30% to be approved via administrative as opposed to a quasi-judicial. You also alluded to justification needs to be provided. I'm just wondering what type of justification would be needed to meet the LDO for that type of parking reduction.
I'm not going to be able to quote from the LDO here at the podium. I can tell you there's a detailed list of criteria which normally are applied in the quasi-judicial setting. Staff has the ability to administratively approve up to 15% currently under normal circumstances. And then if you want to do up to 30%, you can go to council and they can grant up to that amount, but not beyond. In this case, that 16 to 30% that would normally be evaluated by council, they're asking for that to be evaluated by staff. The criteria would be the same. It's a detailed list, but I don't have that to share with you off the top of my head.
Gotcha. And this might be a tough one, but roughly how often do applicants come in and ask for parking reductions currently that are within that 15%?
It is fairly common. I don't have a percentage to apply to it, but we do see office, retail, and even multifamily uses that will, it's fairly common that they'll ask for some level of reduction. The amount varies. But in a mixed-use center where you have different peak times of usage and there's ability to share, it's not uncommon. This particular condition was, for example, used as part of the Fenton mixed-use development approval. And there's a similar proposal as part of the mall redevelopment rezoning that we recently received. So it's not uncommon in a mixed-use setting to have applicants contemplate that they may want that reduction as they move through development plan review and ask not just to have the ability, but to have the ability without having to go quasi-judicial.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
That's it. I have no questions, so.
I don't have any questions since last month.
Yeah, we had a pretty healthy discussion last month, so no additional questions.
Likewise.
Go right ahead.
I have one question. This is more of a process question, because you mentioned that this is the master plan that's going to be before us, but there's 13 pods within that master plan. And we're approving tonight the entire master plan, but as we get in these details in basically the question about the parking and, and granting waivers, is that something that happens? I know I'm maybe getting into the molecular level here, but is that something that happens like at the pod level? I mean, imagine you have these 13 development pods and each one's going to come in on its own timetable. It could be a year, it could be 10 years, 15 years from now on some of the way this is going to develop. Is that the sort of where you're looking at each pod? Is it from a staff perspective and looking at how, as we talk about baking the cake, it's the perfect cake, but it's, we want to know whether we're going to have blue frosting or red frosting on this corner. And that's kind of what the pod. So I just kind of, if you help me understand how have a master plan down to the 13 pods and.
So let's imagine the first pod comes in, and let's just call it pod 1 for simplicity's sake, although they don't have to go in any particular order. Pod 1 would need to be able to meet the development criteria by itself. Because let's suppose that for some reason there's an economic downturn and nothing happens afterwards, it would still need to be able to stand on its own and meet all of the LDO requirements, as well as the requirements associated with the rezoning and the PDP to be approved. So it would have to stand on its own 2 feet. Mm-hmm. And then there would be the ability, I'll give you an example, if there's a little bit of extra parking perhaps that's associated with pod 1 and pod 2 comes along and needs to borrow, as long as pods 1 plus pod 2 equal what's required for the sum of the whole, then they would receive approval and move forward. So, but each phase would have to meet the criteria and be able to stand on its own or in combination with those that have preceded it to be approved.
Okay, so you're looking at it and they build upon each other, so it becomes somewhat additive, and so there's that, for lack of better terms, that synergy between them all, so that when it's all done. But I appreciate
right
the fact that they do, the first one in has to comply, and so, okay. Thanks, I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions for the applicant or for the staff? Before I ask for a motion, just in case someone's at home watching this thing expecting to hear this big spirited debate only to find out that we've already talked it out, but you didn't get to hear us talking it out. The minutes for that discussion are the June 24th session that we approved earlier today. So the minutes for that work session are available for anyone in the public who wants to see what our questions were and what the answers were. So we're not keeping anything back. It just took an entire meeting for us to go through that. So with that in mind, does anyone have a motion on this particular case?
I'll make a motion. I move that the board find case number 18 REZ04 is consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Have we a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion on this?
No, I
Out in
agree
the
with
open?
some of the comments that were made earlier. I really appreciate the applicant's openness to the changes, to the questions and concerns raised throughout the process, and it does check all the boxes in my opinion.
I think for all those reasons, I also think that as a destination center, it's bringing some amenities that will really help build the community in West Cary, medical-based, healthcare-based, as well as everything else that's going to happen out there. So I think having healthcare is basically the anchor tenant, if you will, the anchor of it is great for that area, that region.
Does anyone else have any other discussion points they would like to add to this motion?
Well, I think it's just good to have such a large chunk there be anticipated and for a plan to be in place to kind of guide the design and the eventual development of it, where it's all together and being looked at as a whole. So I think that's good for that particular area as well, being a high density potentially or high traffic area.
Anyone else? Then would all those in favor of 18 REZ04 please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. That is another unanimous carried motion. And we are done with that case. Thank you, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Barron. And we are on our way to the third item on our agenda, which is the Parks and Rec and Cultural Resources Master Plan Addendum and Amendment to the Cary Community Plan. I think I got that right.
Yes. Good evening, board members. My name is Sandy Bailey. I'm in the Transportation and Facilities Department. And this staff report is presented to you for consideration of an addendum to the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Master Plan to address the Chatham-Cary Joint Land Use Area and to amend the Cary Community Plan to incorporate this addendum by reference. You may forward a recommendation to Town Council. In 2012, the town and Chatham County adopted the Chatham-Cary Joint Land Use Plan addressing Cary's western edge. This land use plan did not include parks and greenways planning, but listed this as a future implementation item. The current Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Master Plan was also adopted in 2012 and did not include planning for the joint land use area, as you can see here. This proposed addendum includes a master plan for parks and greenways for the area between the Chatham County line and the town's land use planning boundary to the west, and fulfills the implementation item listed in the joint land use plan. The town has worked with Chatham County throughout this planning process, including them in the consultant selection process at the beginning of the project, seeking out their participation in all public meetings, and presenting draft plans to the Chatham County Recreation Advisory Committee. It is important to note that development is already occurring within the study area. Adoption of a master plan addendum for the study area will ensure that space for future recreation infrastructure grows with the community in a cohesive way, gives property owners and developers notice of where parks and greenways are desirable, and puts the town in the strongest position to ensure parkland and greenway dedication occur where we want them. The 2012 PRCR Master Plan established level of service standards, and those same standards were applied and reviewed and applied when planning for the study area, in addition to consideration of public input. The resulting recommendations for the study area, outlined in blue here, include a potential future park. Should a park be pursued, the recommendation is that it be centrally located within the study area in the vicinity indicated on the map, and that it be served by greenways, among other considerations. A greenways network was also developed, as you can see by the green dashed lines. Considerations during greenway development included tying to the American Tobacco Trail as a primary north-south route, extensions towards Jordan Lake, connections to parks, and loop trails, among other considerations. The conservation land associated with Jordan Lake reaches up to the edges of the study area and is connected to two existing town park sites along the American Tobacco Trail by riparian corridors. The draft addendum includes a recommendation to expand these key corridors wherever possible to enhance ecological benefits and wildlife movement between these larger open space areas. This would not be regulatory, but is intended as a point of discussion and consideration as development occurs. And this concludes staff's presentation. The board may forward a recommendation for approval or denial to town council, and staff will be happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Who has any questions for the staff? We'll start over here. No?
I'm just a little confused by this process, so bear with me. This is the first time we've looked at something that was some sort of a joint county land use, I guess. How did it come about? So you said in 2012 there was initial, just an outline of the fact that we needed to have a plan, and now this is putting some structure to it?
So in 2012, the Chatham County and Cary got together and developed a land use plan for this area that you see outlined in blue and going west beyond that area. And during that plan, it planned for land use, but Parks and Greenways planning was not incorporated into that. But it listed Parks and Greenways planning as a future implementation item, and it said that the town and the county should work together to plan for this area. So the recommendations that you see on this map in front of you within that blue area would be facilities that Cary would ultimately be responsible for maintaining. Anything beyond that blue line, the county, that would most likely be in their jurisdiction. Town would not annex beyond its planning boundary, and so those would be Chatham facilities. The joint land use plan required the county and the town to work together, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily a joint plan where it would be jointly developed facilities. They also have a plan for everything west of that blue line. We just work together as we each develop those plans.
So you work together to make the plan. You're not going to necessarily work together to execute.
Not necessarily. It's not ruled out, but that's right.
Okay, thank you for that explanation.
Any questions?
So to actually piggyback a little bit on Mary Jo's question, so what we're voting for here today is an addendum and an amendment to the Cary Community Plan. We're not changing the joint land use plan.
That is correct.
Okay, great. My second question is, the area that's shown on the slide labeled potential future park, does the town currently own any land in that area, or would it have to procure it?
It does not own land there.
Okay.
So town could either purchase land if that decision was made, but it also, having this on the map, if a large plan development came in for review, by having this on the map, it lets us work with that development community to potentially have parkland dedicated.
Okay, gotcha. I didn't think about that. Thanks.
I guess the question I had was asked about, do we own any of that? So this is potential for either a future bond referendum or some other procurement process. And the same, I guess, would hold true with all the dotted green lines, which are proposed greenways. And we know that this board has already approved a number of developments out in that area. So this is something, I guess, for staff as a guidance. I mean, clearly the green dotted hash lines aren't set in concrete, but it's basically a planning guide to try to be able to find the easements to put that in there, to put those to further connectivity.
That's right. So the green dash lines are a guide. This would pretty much be the alignments. This is a very, the scale is a little bit different. So there's always tweaking when you get down to the development plan review level.
Extra level. So without having the plan in front of me, I'm just curious, because I'm very familiar with that area, particularly from the American Tobacco Trail and some of the land that the town currently already owns that's not developed yet, even for part that was purchased from about 3 bond cycles ago. So this is kind of the piece that was missed, that was left off that plan. So if I was to look at that plan today, it'd basically be more or less a blank piece of paper. And now what the staff is saying is that, no, we'll fill that in now. Now that we know that the blue area is ours, and so this is the plan that we have for that.
That's right. If you look at the current Parks Master Plan, this area is blank.
Right, that's what I thought. That's my memory, because I know the proposed plans along the American Tobacco Trail and where that land is. Okay, so this is our western frontier for Parks and Rec.
Yes.
Anything else?
I'm done it.
This side? All right, if anyone wants to make a motion, we are going to be using the section of our sheet that discusses comprehensive plan amendments, the middle section for this.
I'll move that. The board forward the PRCR Master Plan Addendum and Amendment to Cary Community Plan for the Chatham-Cary Joint Land Use Plan Area to Town Council with a recommendation for approval to amend the comprehensive plan as proposed.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? No?
For me.
More parks, more greenways.
Yes.
Would all those in favor then of this comprehensive plan amendment please say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed say no. We are also unanimously approving. And I believe that brings us to the end of our agenda. Thank you very much. And yes, we're new business, old business, nothing of the kind. There's one more, I'm assuming, unanimous decision to go.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor of adjourning say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? I was right. We are adjourned. Thank you.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.